everyone, so today I am filming my July and Booktubeathon wrap up. I actually had such a good reading month in July. I read 12 books, which was so good for me considering I'd only ever read 10 books in a month before. So I'm so happy about that. Most of them were really good as well. I think I had one 3.5-star read and that was it. I'm just gonna jump straight into it because I've got quite a lot to get through. So the first book that I read in July was We Were Liars by YALC. This follows the story of a very rich girl, well, family I guess, but specifically this one girl and her summers that she spends on her granddad's private island with cousins and family. It's just, this summer's a bit different. She doesn't quite remember things and she thinks her cousins are treating her differently, and it's got a bit of romance and a really good twist at the end. So I quite like this. This one I gave 3.5 stars to, so it was my least favourite of the month. The next one I read, which was actually one of my favourites of the whole month, was The Girls by Emma Cline. I have wanted to read this since last summer when I'd seen it everywhere in hardcover, but I'd heard mixed reviews and the hardcover was really expensive and I have very little space in terms of bookshelves, so didn't buy it. And I spent the whole year really wanting to read it because it's about a cult, heavily based on the Manson cult, which was really interesting to read. It wasn't about the Manson cult, but it followed very similar sort of lines to what happened, in even there being connections to the music industry. I thoroughly loved this. The wait was really worth it because I just devoured this. I gave it 5 stars, loved it, and I really can't wait to reread it. The next one I read was The Square Root of Summer by Harriet, Reuter. Yeah, this one was interesting for me because it had a lot of physics sort of elements to it and wormholes and sciencey explanations, which kind of went over my head in that I really don't understand very much science anymore. Somehow I passed really well in GCSE, but since GCSE it's just gone out my head completely, and even the ability to comprehend it has seemed to have disappeared. So I struggled with it, but I enjoyed the story and the twists it took and the interesting uniqueness of it, because it was definitely unique with the sciencey aspect I guess, and the whole concept of time and movement through time and how it can affect things. I gave this 4 stars, and this book is super pretty with the sprayed edges. It's got little numbers on it as well, which I just thought I'd throw up there. I met Harriet at YALC and she was so fun, and I actually did one of the workshops which she ran, which was great. The next one I read was actually my second favourite book of the month, which every month on my blog I try to do a top 3 reads, and this was second, and it is Wing Jones by Catherine Webber. This was amazing. I loved it so much. It follows the story of a girl who is mixed race. Her grandmother is from China and her other grandmother is from Ghana. Her brother is super athletic and he gets into an accident, and her family aren't rich, so they're trying to make it through with the hospital bills and everything, and she takes up running and there's a competition and it's so good, and I absolutely loved this book and I just want everybody to read it. A lot of YA I feel always was stereotypically set in a middle class white setup, I guess. I don't really know how to say it. So it's nice to read something refreshing and new with characters from different backgrounds, because you definitely get the 2 opposing sort of, I guess not opposing, but the 2 different characters come through of the grandmothers, and honestly I love this so much. 5 stars, easy, and everybody should read it. I also met Catherine Webber at YALC and she was literally the nicest person. She was so much fun. She was getting everybody enthusiastic in the waiting queues, because there were quite a lot of queues, and first of all I was her first signing at YALC and she was super lovely, which she wrote here. I then read 2 ebooks, one after the other. One was Moonrise by Sarah Crossan, which is written in verse and it follows the story of a boy, well, a 17-year-old, I think he was, if I remember rightly, going down to Texas to be with his brother, who is on death row, in the lead up to his execution. And it's just such a good story. I love Sarah Crossan's writing so much with the verse. It just really focuses on what is important, and it was just wonderful, and I loved it so much. I gave it 5 stars. The next book I read was The Ethan I Was Before by Ali Standish, and this was marketed on NetGalley as Goodnight Mr. Tom meets Wonder, and I adored both of those books, and this was amazing as well. It follows a young boy, I can't remember his age exactly, but he's very young. I think in the UK it would be primary school age. I think he's in middle school, but I'm not too sure in America. It's set in the US, and they have him and his family have moved down to this coastal sort of town which has very little there from Boston, following an accident including him and his best friend. And she is, at the beginning, to avoid spoilers, sort of not really mentioned, but something has obviously happened, and it follows him trying to come to terms with this, and it's just so wonderful. This is another one I gave 5 stars to. I then read Truth or Dare by Pratt, which I loved. Follows the story of 2 characters, Claire and Seth, and they come together to form a YouTube channel in order to raise money for Seth's brother, who was in an accident and has had a brain injury. It's the story of their channel, where they do truth or dare, and it just escalates. And both of their relationships with family and Cam, because they both know Cam, obviously Seth's his brother, and very early on in the text, I think it's the beginning actually, Claire volunteers at the facility where Cam is staying and becomes his volunteer. I gave this 4.5 stars because the second part, which is a flip book, so you read Claire's part first and then Seth's, I didn't like Seth's voice as much. I had a few issues with him as a character, but otherwise I liked his development, and both of their developments and their journeys, and I really loved it. Also, Pratt is just a brilliant human being, so there's that. And then read Eden Summer by Liz Flanagan. This is a mystery thriller-ish, and this follows the story of Jess, and she gets to school one morning and finds that Eden is missing, who is her best friend. It's her retracing her steps, trying to find Eden and work out what is wrong in Eden's life, because Eden has been through a lot, as has Jess, and it's coming to terms with her story and Eden's story, and that things that aren't perfect, but they can work through them. And I really enjoyed this. It was so different to anything I've read before. I don't think I've really read anything where someone's missing, unless it's been like a murder mystery or something. And yeah, I loved the ending as well. It was amazing, and yeah, I gave this 4 stars. The next book I read was Loved by PC Cast and Kristen Cast, and I read this pretty much as soon as I got it because it is I guess companion series to The House of Night, but it follows on pretty much a year later, I think. It's part of the House of Night Otherworld series, and it's the first one. It's not actually released in the UK, but I love this series so much, so I ordered it online. I ordered a signed copy from the House of Night website, which cost me a fortune in shipping, but I mean, you do what you do for your favourite book. I got this. I absolutely loved this. It was amazing to be in with the characters again, and just finding out what they've done with the plot lines, because I was admittedly unsure as to what they would do, because there's a lot of scope for them just to end up going down the same routes that have been in the previous 12 books. But no, this was completely different and so good, and something that isn't even hinted at in the original books. I would say never pick this up without finishing the previous series though, because it literally contains so many spoilers for the previous series, which is understandable because it's following the same story just a year later, and it has a lot of character differences, I would say. So various characters have reappeared or not, or change who they are. It would affect your reading of the previous series if you read this first. I loved it. I love the House of Night series, unashamedly, absolutely adore it. It's a very sentimental series for me. I think I describe it now as like my Harry Potter, like what Harry Potter is to other people, because I just love it. I grew up with it, well, from like year 7ish, so yeah, loved it, loved it, loved it. And this was the first book I finished for Booktubeathon, which was the book with a person on the cover challenge. I then picked up The Pearl Thief by Elizabeth Wein. This was meant to be for the read outside challenge, and I didn't read very much outside at all. I kind of just ignored a lot of the challenges. Yeah, this is a historical mystery, I guess. It follows Julie Beaufort Stewart, and she's going back to her grandfather's Scottish estate before it is sold. Well, it has been sold to a school since he has died. That is said on the back, so that's not a spoiler. It is set in June 1938, so it's really interesting to read a completely different sort of view, I guess, especially as I don't read that many mysteries anyway. Yeah, I really liked it. I loved the way all the people were sort of woven together. There were so many different characters, but so many different sort of ties between them all, and I just really loved it. I also loved how the librarian had Treacher-Collins syndrome, as it was like quite refreshing to see something unique about a character in a historical fiction novel. I feel when you read historical fiction, the characters are very standard because the focus is on the history, I guess. But there would have been people with Treacher-Collins and various other disabilities and health issues, I guess, and they aren't really focused on it. So it was really, really nice to read about that. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. I then read Spellbook of the Lost and Found by Maria Fowley Doyle. I guess you could say I read some of this outside, so it's going towards that, but I didn't finish it outside because it was midnight when I finished it. But I really, really loved this. This follows a lot of characters which I found quite confusing at first, but I soon managed to work it out, and they find that things are going missing, and then they find this spell book of the Lost and Found, and they cast this spell and they find things that have gone missing, but then it doesn't quite work out because more things go missing, and it's very confusing but absolutely wonderful. It's a magical realism? Yeah, magical realism. This was just so good. I gave this 5 stars because it was well worth it. The final book I read in the month of July and for Booktubeathon was Ink by Alice Broadway, and this was the cover by challenge. I can't remember exactly how it was worded, but honestly this light is not very good at the moment. Ah, there we go. You can kind of see it. It's like shiny and it's got the tattoo patterns on it. And honestly, this cover is just gorgeous. I love it so, so much. And the story is amazing. So, I mean, what more could you ask for? It's a fantasy that follows this society where whenever something major happens, they get a tattoo on their body. From the very early ages, like when they were a baby, they get one of their name, and it just goes from there. They get family trees and stuff like that. It follows this one girl who is... It starts with her father's death, and it's her coming to terms with this. Because when they all die, they are flayed and their skin is made into a book, and then it is judged and it either burns or they can take it home. And it's following her story along the lead up to her father's judgment. I can't remember the exact word. It's also her journey into like graduating school, I guess is the best way of saying it. It is the first in a series. The rest, like none of the books are out yet, and I cannot wait for the next one. I believe the next one is February next year, according to Alice, as I asked her at YALC. But I can't wait for it. It's so good, and it ends on such a dramatic note. That is all for my July and Booktubeathon wrap up. I am so happy with the reading month I had. Honestly, I have never read that much in a month before, and I am so thrilled. That's all for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye!